Good morning. A bike here this morning. Good morning, Cliff.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Thank you for your summary.
Yeah, it's not done yet, obviously, but it's a good start. Just it's a bear to get through that thing.
It's pretty huge.
It's huge.
Well, bless you for trying and breaking the water, so to speak.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll wait a couple more minutes for our fearless leaders to show up here. Morning, Ned.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful morning today.
It is a beautiful morning. I might also have to bail out early. I've got a thesis and a grant proposal that are both hanging over my head rather severely. So, but interesting conversations are always worth having.
Well, I think we can probably get started. Good morning, Sarah. Sorry to miss you all last week, but I was enjoying myself in the water. In the water.
Where were you?
Upstate New York. In the Adirondacks. Long Lake is the name of the lake.
Is that where you grew up, or is that?
Yeah, I've been going up there for most of my life, trying to make it up. Missed a good chunk of time during the child rearing days, but went up with my kids this time, and it was nice.
Yeah.
What do y'all want to talk about today?
I wouldn't mind talking about that Tacoma Hills project. I don't know if this is the venue for that, but I think Bill and I should talk at some point, at least quickly, because the notice of intent for that 319 grant is due next Friday. I've been talking to Midmiac, and last I heard, she was going to reach out to the drain office and just like confirm their level of interest or availability for involvement, match, all that stuff. Haven't heard from her yet, but I think at some point, maybe early next week at the latest, stakeholders should have a Zoom call or something. But the notice of intent is very minor. It's like a couple pages. I don't know if anyone watched that webinar, but it wouldn't take much to put together. We just have to have an idea of exactly what the general plan is.
Have you had a chance to talk with Ruth about it at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I had a call with her a couple weeks ago, and we kind of left it as we need to figure out what the drain office thinks. And Teresa had worked with them. She's super close with them, and she knew what they were considering. I think they were paying their consultant to come up with a couple solutions, but they weren't really thinking about the 319 potential. So she volunteered to hammer that down. I just need to call her. I texted her on Monday, so I haven't heard yet, but I'll follow up there today. But she said like they had interest in doing something, and they just hadn't really thought about using grant funding to do it. The only issue is that it sounds like they were considering using their phase 2 like stormwater budget in order to fund it and like use it as path like the public education like line item. the only thing is if we wouldn't be able to use that as match because that would be using state funds to meet regulatory purpose, which isn't allowed. So, I mean, match can be time too. Like I could put time towards it, and that would count. It would just be a matter of figuring out exactly what needs or what the desire to be done out there is, and then what it would roughly cost. The notice of intent is very limited. They just want to make sure that it's something that they could potentially fund. I think in the past they had a lot of things that were just like so off the wall, like requests. I know somebody in the webinar called in and asked, they were like a private salvage yard and wanted to know if they could use the money to get like a new oil burner or something, which is just like not all. So that's the whole point of this notice of intent, just to weed out stuff like that.
So people don't waste their time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know that we want to take time on this call to talk about the Tacoma Hills specific part of that overall project. My sense is that if we wanted to use the 319, which is the federal money that goes through the state DEQ, right?
Yep.
That we would need to be doing something that more directly addressed the pollution that's been identified in the Red Cedar River watershed.
Yep.
And if you want to compete in the tier 1, which is most likely to be funded, you have to be proposing something that's likely to actually make a measurable difference. And my understanding of the Red Cedar River watershed management plan is that most of the stuff that's likely to make a difference is in the ag land upstream. So kind of from a technical standpoint, I'm still trying to work out in my mind, what is it that we could be proposing to do that would be competitive at that tier 1 level? And that's the part I don't know enough about technically to know which problem we could be going after. Basically, we're talking right now about suburban runoff, right? Subdivision runoff.
Mm-hmm.
Is it plausible that enough could be done on subdivision runoff to make a measurable difference in water quality in the river? And that's where I need help from you guys who know more about the technical aspects of what is it that could actually be done.
Well, I think the goal overall should be, or it would be more competitive if it's an E. coli reduction, purpose of the project. And wasn't there like a goose problem there, I heard? Is that pretty bad? Because well, that is...
Depending on I don't know. I mean, from an amateur standpoint, mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of geese.
So that
they leave an awful lot of shit on the ground.
Yeah.
Is that likely to be a measurable source of E. coli? Oh, I don't know.
Well, one of the St. Clair, I don't forget who it was, but somebody down in Lake St. Clair was funded through this program this year to install acoustic deterrents for their beach because geese. So like geese poop is on their radar as a source that is fundable. But it's also...
Wait, I need to write that down. Goose poop is on your radar.
Yeah.
My phrase for the day.
Yeah. But you would think that, I think that could be a portion of a more holistic project. Like, the reason the geese are there is because it's a manicured lawn. I'm not familiar with it, but my assumption is that it's, mowed around there. Just growing native grasses and stuff that would filter by, geese don't want to live there because they can't hide. I mean, they can't see. They're not hiding from like fox and all that stuff. But as part of that, if it's, there's additional upstream in the neighborhood, swales in the ditches and stuff that are picking up other runoff from yards where there's dogs and stuff. I think you could make an argument. It wouldn't be as strong as saying, hey, we're putting in a new manure management system in, upstream of the red cedar, but also we've basically been told that we're not going to get funding for that type of stuff anyways due to our relationships with the farmers or lack thereof. So I think something like that would be our best bet, but
well, I'm also going on the assumption that addressing one artificial pond in one subdivision is kind of a small target. On the other hand, when I go back and look at the past projects, I see that the rain gardens on Michigan Ave in Lansing were funded under this program a few years back.
Yeah, there seems like there's a lot of fairly targeted projects.
The matching part is one that I am not familiar with because the sources that we typically seek federal funding from don't allow matches because they feel like it provides well-funded universities with an unfair advantage.
Yeah, that's true.
And in this case, yeah, we might be able to, if there's a strong educational component and some MSU faculty time, staff time is devoted to that educational portion, and that could be counted as a match. Maybe we could do that. I don't have that educational role, so I can't donate my own time. Ruth teaches classes. Many people teach on subjects like this. I just don't know the mechanics of figuring out how to calculate a match. And my sense is that that's one of the things they're going to look at in the two-pager. If you don't have a solid plan for a substantial match, they're going to tell you don't waste your time.
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking about Ruth. If she's got a good idea of a teaching component that could be part of a proposal that would meet the requirements for a match, then I'm it makes more sense to me to devote energy to at least writing the notice of intent. But if we haven't figured that bit out, then I'm a little stuck. I don't know. Ned, do you teach anything in this realm? Do you?
I mean, not directly. I've taken freshman classes to the sewage treatment plant and things like that, but not in a very direct way. I have, Susan Maston has talked about water, water supplies, but that's a whole different ballgame. In my class, she's talked basically about the Flint story, but that's very distant from what you're talking about. I mean, in principle, there's a chemical component to it, and I suppose I could teach about it, but it wouldn't be sort of publicly accessible. It would be a small class of freshmen. I mean, it depends on sort of the scale of what you consider to be acceptable, or what they would consider to be acceptable educational activity. I am planning to teach that class this fall.
Well, and I don't know how this fits in. It feels like it fits in that in terms of the pond that I've mentioned in my neighborhood, trying to manage it as well. It's seeming from the research I've done, and I just talked to MSU Extension, that we have a nutrient-rich pond, meaning that we have too many geese and ducks and stuff, and so it's affecting the growth on there, which, I don't know how to manage the chemical, then it's like dumping chemicals in it to deal with it as well. So I don't know if there's like an educational aspect from teaching the community about how to manage this stuff. I don't know. I mean, what you're talking about at Tacoma Hills seems somewhat related to how to manage my little pond too. And then with the stormwater, it's like, is the stormwater going into that? I don't know. I'm not sure if there can be a bigger picture, more of the township ponds that are around, teaching how to manage them. I don't know.
I also like the idea of a demonstration that would show alternatives to mowing. We certainly have a strong culture of 2-inch grass, monocrop, and we've tried to do a little bit of that here at the township, but we've taken a more expensive approach with, more of a garden than a meadow. And it would be nice to see other alternatives, especially in that neighborhood.
Well, and when I asked MSU Extension, one of the things is to make a border, like a grass border. But what does that even look like? I mean, and does that help with stormwater drain? I mean, I don't know.
You mean a grass border around the water feature that would be
Mhm.
soaking, in some sense filtering it?
That, but also it said that because like what you were saying about geese, they don't like the tall grass. So I don't know if that would help with Tacoma or not too.
Oh, I see.
Well, that's essentially what the mid-MEAC engineers are saying, is that, and just exactly what Cliff is saying, that it's that, and I was looking at our ordinances that specify how steep the slope in a detention basin can be. And I presume that's is a safety issue. That you're trying to make a pond safe enough that someone who falls in or goes in can get back out. And it's that same safety feature that makes it attractive for the geese. And if I understand the alternative appropriately, if I understand the alternative, the idea is to break most of that, if not all of that border, so that people still have access to the water directly in some spots, but it's not this long, expansive, easy in-out kind of. It's more like driveways than the whole thing.
Well, just as a practical matter, speaking very personally, we have a little bit of border to Lake Lansing, and although it's not a sloped beach, it's essentially a seawall, but we just put a string about 1.5 feet above the edge, strung between the wimpiest of sticks, and the geese go elsewhere.
Well, that's what the neighbors do. Many of the neighbors will put that sort of a string around their own lawn, and it looks like hell.
Well, it's true. It's not beautiful.
This is the big challenge: is that the look is the look that people purchased.
Yeah.
And so the big trick here is really an educational issue with getting people to accept a different look.
Well, people accept fences. I mean, right? Between properties and things like that. I mean, it's
not in this neighborhood. They don't.
Oh, is that right?
Let me see if I can. Leroy, do you have the ability to enable my screen sharing?
Yeah, if, let's see. Yep, you should be able to do it.
That's definitely our issue as well as the look. It's the neighbor who's got an issue with it.
People bought these homes, for this look and feel. Yeah. And they will put their little fences here, but they're not standard, and they're hokey, and they got pieces of foil hanging from them, and you can't mow around them, and it's a real pain. But it's a heaven, especially because some of these backyards are open to the river, which is right behind these houses.
I see. Yeah.
But I do think that it would make a much stronger proposal if we could specify a demonstration here in Tacoma Hills that had the active participation of 3 other neighborhoods that also have similar ponds, that are also doing similar things, that can be involved from ground zero, and hopefully scale up what we do in this particular instance to other places. I think that would be good, and if there is an MSU component that can kind of do that, facilitate that educational cross-fertilization between neighborhoods, and that can count as a match, that to me that sounds like a pretty solid way forward.
Can you use a different term besides cross-fertilization?
Cross anti-fertilization.
No, I can't. No,
How about pollination?
uh, yeah, okay.
I'm
I mean,
wondering.
is that something? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm totally out of line. Like, is that something that's possible, Cliff, to try to combine stuff like that to try to be educational? And I don't know. I mean,
Combining like the goal of the project, or you mean combining like other neighborhoods? What?
like other neighborhoods to try to be. I mean, I don't know what your job is in the aspect of, is it like trying to be educational to help the stormwater, or I mean, I'm not sure from that aspect of where your job comes in, of what you're trying, like, are you trying to encourage grants to be able to help? I don't
Yeah,
even know what I'm asking, but
it's well, the tricky part with this is that like through my job, I'm coordinator of the stormwater committee, but it's all based on the regulatory system of the MS4 program. And that money, like if we applied as the Greater Lansing Regional Committee for Stormwater Management to do this, those like public education benefits, while they're good in their own right, they wouldn't be able to be cited as, you know, a best management practice for educating the public because it was supported directly through state and federal funds. So that's where it gets tricky. So like in the past when they've applied for some of this stuff, it was like Tri-County Regional Planning Commission had, or was like the applicant. It's just, it gets confusing. And even Ruth and I had this conversation, like we don't really understand like where that line can be drawn. Like when is the stormwater committee going to say, oh, we don't want to spend our staff time on something that we're not getting a direct benefit for? Yeah, it's good for the watershed, but it's not meeting the regulatory requirement that the group is built to navigate.
is the stormwater commission that you're talking about, is one of the goals to try to eliminate the putting of chemicals into the water? Is that a goal or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the, so the feds have like 10 categories where we're required to educate the public. So that vary from like how to report illicit discharges, how to, properly maintain your lawn, and included in that is like home best management practices for pesticides, fertilizers, and lawn chemicals. So it's something we focus on. We have like materials and brochures and stuff to try to limit usage of chemicals, that can access waters of the state. But it, we're at a little disadvantage the way our whole thing is set up. Like our peers at the planning agency in Grand Rapids, they are the Lower Grand River Organization of Watersheds, which is essentially MGRO, which we have the Middle Grand River Organization of Watersheds here, but they are like the GLRC and MGRO together. So they're this like quasi nonprofit governmental agency who has goals outside of the regulatory system. So even though they're applying for 319 grants and other funding through LGRO, there's not like this direct like I just had a conversation with them last week. Like they kind of skirt that line of supporting their MS4 program with federal funds, but I don't know. It's confusing. I don't think I answered that question at all. But yeah, it's a goal to educate people on some of that stuff. The only challenge is having that group be a sponsor of that application. Tri-County is different. Tri-County would be their own thing, but you can draw that distinction between like my time as being, as a planner at Tri-County versus the coordinator of the Greater Lansing Regional Committee for Stormwater Management. But I guess the real challenge is like this is definitely going to take Drain Commission resources in terms of time and all that, and that's where they might not be interested because they can get it done without 319 grants, and the like actual money they have line itemed currently to do something out there to my understanding, is through the MS4 line item in their budget, which wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't be disinterested in using for this project, I think, which is why I need to talk to Teresa and Paul at the drain office. I don't know if I answered any of your questions there.
It
Yeah.
seems to me like the next step really, in that webinar and in all their materials, they really encourage potential applicants to reach out and discuss their ideas before they submit the NOI.
Okay.
And what's his name? Bob
Sweet.
Sweet. It seems to me like a discussion with him on this topic would be the next logical step. I think you, me, and Ruth, and whoever else you think needs to be there, we can kind of kick this around and see what's likely to ring their bell.
Okay.
Can you set that up? Do you want me to? What's the best approach here?
I can do that. I can reach out to everyone. I'll see if the drain office is interested as well. And they need to be. So do you want to have an initial conversation with us, with a small group, and then take that to Bob, or do you want to just?
Well, I think since Mid-MEAC has already got the wheels turning with their engineers, I think we need to know where they're at. And we haven't, there were some efforts weeks ago to set up a meeting and it hasn't gelled. I think we need to reignite that. And I think if we had you, me, Teresa, and Ruth, that would be good.
Cool. I'll do that.
I'm wondering, I don't want to stray too far, but I'm wondering if some of the work that you're looking at, that you've started, Cliff, with the green stormwater infrastructure review might be applicable. For example, I haven't read your initial review or the progress you've made yet, but you've mentioned that there's maybe a dozen things that are easy fixes in our code of ordinances and possibly elsewhere that might be demonstrated in a neighborhood as well as modified in the code. So that's one idea. And that, going through this is obviously something that the city of Lansing is interested in doing as well. And maybe there are some parallel opportunities in Lansing. So that's the first idea. I'll just throw that out there. The second idea is some of you saw the recent letter of the Nakoma Drain Project, and I'm not sure if that relates at all to this, but there's concern about a 3-foot drain that's going to be draining water out of the Lake Lansing watershed. And I really don't know much about it, but maybe there's some opportunities to capture that water in the neighborhoods rather than ship it elsewhere. So just a couple.
Yeah, that one is I was looking into that a little bit yesterday because there is a notice on the township's website about that project. And it seems to me that letter that we saw was someone who came to the process very late and misunderstood the purpose of the project. They're actually trying to avoid putting too much water into Lake Lansing by increasing the capacity of the drain, right? And the person who wrote that letter misunderstood that they were actually trying to increase input into Lake Lansing.
I was doing like the stormwater.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So any thoughts?
I was also looking back while we were talking at the Environmental Commission's efforts around phosphorus. And the last reference I can find is that we put together a draft ordinance that the township board declined to enact back in 2010. Does that sound about right, Ed?
But that was because it sort of got dropped because the statewide rules basically superseded it. Our own in terms of, sales of phosphorus containing fertilizer and so forth. I've forgotten where we are on that, though. I think there may be some qualifications for, things like golf courses and things like that, where they can, they don't have to, that, and I think newly starting lawns, people who are just trying to get something going, can still use these things. And frankly, that's, the soils around here mostly are rich enough in phosphorus that that's not necessarily a good idea. But anyway.
Well, the reason I'm asking is that one of the things that came up in the webinar was even changing people's attitudes or knowledge about over fertilizing their lawns could potentially be meet the BMP kind of criterion.
Oh, for education.
So if you do a pre and post survey of your project area, and before your intervention, people don't have a good understanding of, or a misunderstanding of, what causes too many geese, right? And afterwards, people have learned that certain conditions cause an overpopulation of geese. Then that's a sort of a project accomplishment that you can demonstrate. And if people have actually changed their behavior in terms of fertilizing their lawns or landscaping, then that's even further proof that you've had an impact.
Yeah.
Part of the funding can be used for those survey work. Does that sound right, Cliff?
Yeah, I think so. That's good. Yeah. Forgot about that.
And when I think about how the match can be done, if you've got a professor who's doing a survey research course or an environmental course that includes that kind of survey research component, and they go out and mobilize students to contact residents and survey them before and after, then that's not a trivial contribution. If you had to pay a professional firm to do that, right? But I think Ruth told me that you can use standard MSU rates for undergraduate labor, and that can add up quickly.
So, of course, Susan Maston has done things like that that were, very much in the category of civil engineering. Asking not so much about water management per se, but that was part of it. She's had design courses where she's basically asked students to look at an area and ask, try to envision improvements that, let's see, she did the sort of the Hazlitt, not Shoptown, what am I trying to say? The old L&L area, 1 year, and then, anyway, she's that kind of thing. She's had her advanced classes do, not so much in terms of surveying the people in a given neighborhood, but looking at the layout and how things could be improved. So she might have some thoughts along those lines. Maybe we can bring it up tonight.
I think our parks department, Emma in particular, might have some ideas too. I know we spent a lot of money on mowing. And we are looking at creative options for reducing mowing. I don't think this is classified as a park, but Emma might also be able to bring in her conservation corps as a matching if we're involving residents in planting or maintaining, that type of thing.
What happens to in the mowing? What happens to the grass clippings? Is that are they taken away, or are they just mulched in or something?
In the parks, it's just mulched, but as far as I know, but it's still a big expense. And, with parks and conservation lands expanding, costs going up, taxes uncertain, there's a lot of potential, I think, for looking at some other best management practices.
Well, now that we have a farmer's market, all we got to do is have the township raising goats, and sell goat meat, goat milk, goat soap. All those things are, great products to support the township.
I was thinking
Always-
geese would make a nice
Well,
geese jerky.
I'm always wanting goats. I think that's a great idea.
Well, I think a lot of people think it's a great idea, and then they do it and they say, oh man, those goats make a lot of noise, and they do poop, although their poop is pretty harmless. I don't know. I've been told that they tried that in Berkeley, California a fair amount, and then they finally gave up on it. And I'm not quite sure what the reasons for giving up on it was, but I think.
Well, the same thing that makes a goat a good landscape manager is the thing that makes them impossible to control.
Is what?
Right? They'll eat anything, and they'll overcome any obstacle. So keeping them eating the things that you want them to eat,
right,
staying in the area where you want them to stay, is really hard. If you have
Even
a
if you
fenced
tether
yard that's
them?
overgrown, you put them in there and they'll do it. But when they're done, they'll just jump over the fence and go into the next yard.
But what if you tethered them rather than try to fence them?
Did you ever try tethering a goat? First, you got to get a hold of it. I'm serious. I've tried to get hold of sheep before, and it's impossible. They'll outrun you. In a wet paddock, you're done for.
Well, yeah, the zoo where I worked, we had them pretty well contained, but they were, those were mostly young animals. Yeah, that's an interesting challenge.
I don't. I think goats are going to be a much harder sell than a tall grass buffer.
Right. Right. Tall grass buffer, I mean, done with sort of taste. I mean, a nice greedy buffer, you get, red-winged blackbirds and various things like that I would consider to be assets to the neighborhood, so to speak.
Well, and that's where I think that having Emma come in and help. Well, I mean, Emma's who I'm thinking of considering, asking what can you help teach me of what kind of buffer I can create. But Bill, you said the comment about safety wise, I hadn't thought about that part of needing to have an escape way out kind of thing. So I don't know what to do with that kind of stuff.
Well, but at least the pond in Tacoma Hills is nowhere near. It's not like there's any place where there's a wall that's a difficult thing to climb out along, right? I mean,
no, the entire thing is the same gentle slope.
Basically just a big puddle.
This is, and Cliff knows this, but this is something that we've been working on since I moved here 15 years ago. And what we've learned in the process is that the very initial steps of discussing it are hugely important, right? Once a certain set of people get in their mind that you're proposing something that they don't like, they'll fight you tooth and nail to the end of their days. So starting a conversation in a way that genuinely lets people be part of the design is hugely important. When we had the get together down on the pond a couple months ago with the engineers and Drain Commissioner's office in Mid-Meac, literally 2 days later, chemicals were applied to the lagoon. The next time I went down, the signs were up. And I don't know for certain that group of people standing there looking provoked that, but I know the guy who would have called them.
So yeah, but I mean, whose authority, sort of upon whose authority would those chemicals be applied? I mean, wouldn't that be the whole neighborhood association? Wouldn't that have to be something agreed upon?
It's tricky. Basically, it's tricky legally and it's tricky socially. But effectively, the former president of the neighborhood association lives on the lagoon and has been delegated authority to have those treatments done when he sees fit.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a little too much concentration of power. On the other hand, of course, yeah, sometimes you have diffusion of power and nothing gets done. So
this weekend, by the way, he and his band are doing a driveway concert.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you want to come and see the pond on Saturday night, it'll be festive. Probably not the best moment to bring up the idea of changing the look and feel of the lagoon. I plan to use it as an occasion to gently invite some people into the conversation.
I'm wondering if there might also be a possibility to think more broadly about other neighborhoods. And maybe, I don't know if there's time or not, but maybe sort of a regional grant program where neighborhoods that come forth and want to pilot some of these alternative practices could apply for the assistance. Similar to what we benefited from working with Teresa and Midmiac on our little rain garden roundabout, where we benefited from dozens of some plants that were selected by folks at MSU, pollinator friendly native plants. And maybe expanding on that to include more like prairie seed or whatever options that are deemed appropriate. So realizing
That's something
that,
I've been interested in trying to implement. So like my peers over in Grand Rapids, they at Elgrow, I just had a call with them and try to learn more about their program, but they have something called the Rainscaping Program, and it's essentially just that, but it's more advice-based. Like they don't, if a business owner calls them up and says, hey, I want to put a rain garden in on my property, but I have no idea what to do, they help guide you through the process. A lot of that is like putting you in touch with a designer and helping point you towards the right plants. And then like right now, because they have less to do because all their events got canceled, like every Thursday they're going out as a staff and like doing maintenance and all these. But it's not like financial contribution, but it's guidance, which is half the battle, probably more so, because a lot of it is like if someone's doing some landscaping anyways, they're going to spend money, even if it's not like an engineered soil or amended slope and all this. Like just having native deep-rooted plants is enough in a lot of situations. I think that'd be cool to bring to the area. I think they have a little bit of grant support, but it's more to like cover their staff time. It's not like, hey, here's a bunch of free design dollars and free plans, but that could be certainly could be a component of it. Just their particular one they've had going for a few years is more, focused on being a resource of knowledge.
yeah. And Ann Arbor's got a master rain gardener program, which is it's all online. Any of you could take it. That's also something that'd be cool to bring to the neighborhoods, to the residents, to the region. I'm not sure it accomplishes their immediate goals in that Tacoma Hills neighborhood, but it might be a complementary initiative.
Would the educational requirements for a proposal be satisfied by using else's,
Sarah, I think you said that you're in Cornell.
population?
Sorry, my internet's messing up on me. Say that again.
I missed all that too.
I missed it too.
There was a lot of garble there. I was asking, Sarah, you're in Cornell Woods, is that right?
Yeah.
Whereabouts is the pond?
Goldenwood and Hatch, so on the south side.
Goldenwood and Hatch.
It's way smaller than yours, but Ned, I totally missed what you said. It garbled.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering whether the use of an educational program that exists already, like the one that Leroy mentioned in Ann Arbor, could satisfy the educational part of writing a proposal. In other words, rather than inventing some specific local new thing, education of the public via an existing program, but reaching, you know, enabling its reaching this population would count. I haven't read any.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the idea of complementing things that people already want to do, and also appreciating Bill's comment about starting the conversations early, and then also working with neighborhoods that want to cooperate, maybe even providing a little competition. The tree planting initiative might also relate in some ways, just occurred to me. We're looking for ways to get trees out to residents through neighborhoods, and get them planted in proper places and such.
Are there any trees that are known to be sort of discouraging to geese? Either because they taste bad or something, or they make the soil taste bad, I mean the grass, or because they, you know, provide cover that is somehow, you know, unfriendly to geese.
Thorny quack bush is known for its geese prevention.
Exactly. I mean, around Lake Lansing, there is an active, what happens is that, you know, people go out and search for the nests and simply, they don't kill the geese themselves, but they try to limit the opportunity for new geese to be created.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And that's a fairly, I mean, that's an annual thing. There's sort of I haven't participated in it, but I'm aware that it happens. And there's sort of at the end of the year, there's I've forgotten, an accounting where people say, you know, this many nests and this many eggs were found and stopped.
Is that kind of the same kind of thing? I mean, structurally in like the deer population management, is that like is there like an official management of that, like there are deer, or is that just people deciding to go do that?
No, it official, but official in the sense there's a Lake Lansing has an extra district, sort of a self-taxing district. So there's the Lake Lansing Property Owners Association, basically, because we tax ourselves. And so some people are actually paid to do that.
Okay.
But it's not Meridian Township per se. It's kind of the locally organized.
I don't know if this is relevant or not. For the sake of brainstorming, just I love the idea of a stormwater district. If there's any way to, that might be further down the line, but if there's a way to fund some of these projects on an ongoing basis, that might also be an interesting road to pursue. That maybe that'll come out of the green infrastructure audit, but just throwing ideas out here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, what do we know about the costs of all the different and the incredible patchwork of management activities that different neighborhoods and different water bodies? I mean, is there, do we know of any examples of communities that have a sort of integrated program for the whole area, for instance, that, you know, that have analyzed essentially the cost structure of the whole thing? I mean, when you talk about money, people sometimes pay attention.
I know the chemicals on our one little tiny pond is a ton. It's like $350 to $400 per treatment. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to know if there's other people that have.
And how often do they treat?
Well, at this point, it's when I get a complaint from the neighbor, I have to. I mean, that's where some of this educational aspect of what Bill's talking about is why I'm trying to figure out what that means. You know, how often do I need to actually put chemicals on it? And then with my talking to MSDU Extension, they're like, it's a pond, so it's kind of natural. So I would say it depends on what happens with it. It's probably 3 to 4 times a summer. So I mean, there's a major expense to that tiny little pond. So.
Right. And what are the main goals of the chemical applications?
Well, if it's a year with it's got algae, I'm basically so that it looks clear and not isn't covered with green stuff. But
So
you know, if you drive up north and say it again.
I was just going to say, so these are basically herbicides, aquatic herbicides of some sort.
Yeah.
Sonar or one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard of people using dyes that basically just limit the sun penetration, various other strategies that are maybe less sort of directly biologically chemical.
Yeah. I just read about that last night. Yeah.
Right.
Sarah, that pond has a fountain, yeah?
Yeah.
And the fountain is there to accomplish that same purpose, but it doesn't do that? Is that?
It does, but on the edges where it doesn't get the movement is where it gathers. And then the duckweed grows so fast that it expands out. But you're also, you know, there's that time between the fountain can be turned on from the winter to, well, there's a bigger issue that the fountain, technically, I learned this year, doesn't have to be taken out in and out. So while it's not running, then the duckweed is starting to grow. So that kind of thing. But I mean, when I look around, because now that I'm having to manage this, I look around at other ponds in the area and stuff, and you know, even my kids are like, oh, they must put chemicals on that pond because there's nothing on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, there's a fountain. There's other ponds in the area, and you can tell whether they put something on it or not. So I mean, to me, I like the idea of doing a bigger management or bigger educational piece of what to do to manage these water areas. But I don't know what that would look like. And it's hard, Bill, if you've got a group that's deciding to put chemicals on it without any, I mean, that's what I've been trying to avoid personally with our pond, is saying, me as the association president, I'm going to decide when that gets done because I'm the one that's in charge of managing the money, you know, or assigned to, you know, that kind of thing. And so that's hard when you've got other people deciding when that is.
Yeah.
What's your goal with Tacoma? Is it the geese management, or what's your, like, when you're this whole discussion, what's the goal with that?
Well, that depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Right? So for some people, the goal is the status quo. For some people, the goal is to reduce costs. For some people, the goal is to be more environmentally friendly. And that's why I believe it's so crucial in the early stages to get all those differing viewpoints on the table so everybody feels like they're being heard and doesn't feel like they're fighting something that you're already trying to do. And believes that they're seeking, that their voice is going to be heard.
Yeah.
So the latest round of discussion came about because some folks who have long wanted to stop spending our money, our association money, on poisoning the pond are now in a leadership position and willing to take the issue up once again.
Okay.
But all of the folks who have been part of various discussions in the past, including potentially installing a fountain, right? 10 years ago, that was we spent a lot of time thinking about what would it cost, and you know, who would do the maintenance, and you have to take it, you take all that stuff. And then the conversation died because people moved on and new issues came along. And right now, there's a group of people who are interested in doing something other than maintaining this really artificial water body that seems to be a problem. But it doesn't mean that other minds haven't stuck with their previous positions.
Okay.
But I'm kind of formulating a thought here of doing a quick overview of, I don't know, Leroy, if the township GIS group has an easy capability to define open water in the township. If they already have a layer that shows open water bodies. From a remote sensing standpoint, it's not that difficult to map all the ponds in the township, but if somebody's already done it, I won't do it. But I think it could be very instructive to have, especially for this notice of intent, and eventually for the full proposal, to be able to describe the potential magnitude of the issue in the township. Right, there's 35 or 57 ponds, and they range in size from this to that, and the total water body area is this, and we might even be able to reach out through various networks being treated. How many of these ponds are currently being afflicted by peace? I just don't have a good overview, but I don't think it's a huge technical issue to get it. So Roy, if you could reach out to them and see if they've already got.
Sure. Cliff might know of something already.
Or maybe Cliff, maybe you've already got some sort of a.
I could ask our JS people. I'm sure we have something like that. Also, even just asking the drain office, because for this exercise, they're going to want to see the impact on the river itself, and so we could try to, quantify how many of these ponds are directly draining into the waters of the state. All of them are probably going somewhere if they're detention ponds. Some will be retention.
Well, there's also the issue of groundwater recharge.
But, that would be what the state would. I think I'm having internet problems. Can you guys hear me?
Mine's bad too.
Me too.
It's weird. I don't know what you heard of that, but yeah, I'll look into our GIS stuff.
I'll check with our folks as well, and yeah, I'll also be happy to share that info on the master rain gardener, and be interested to learn more about the Elgro counterpart and any other ways we can kind of promote ecological landscaping, and as well as this kind of this template that Cliff's been started out, green infrastructure audit, which I think gets at Ned's question about whether there is a model out there. It sort of seems like what the green infrastructure audit is geared towards is to kind of review the opportunities in your community. And I don't know how much it includes our blue infrastructure, but the intent is to to manage our water wisely.
I'm also just curious about, in a sense, what are the distinctions between ponds that have been made because of developments that are basically just, concentrating the water to make it possible to have a bunch of houses, versus more natural, things that were originally there, like Lake Lansing or Park Lake or whatever, which not to say that they haven't been hugely modified, but they weren't created as sort of drainage for a given area. I'm just curious, how those categories.
Fortunately, we've got a record that tells us which of the current water bodies existed prior to subdivision.
Right.
We've got aerial photographs before the township was built out, and we can. It's not a trivial matter to go back to that archive and figure that out, but it's not technically difficult. It's just a time consuming.
Okay.
Another project.
Well, hopefully, I can see writing that into a proposal. I can see having a chunk of the proposal that is, let's develop a historical view of these water bodies that informs the people who are making decisions today about how to manage them. Was this a natural water body that's always been there, or was it, I mean, we don't know pre-agriculture, but we certainly know pre-subdivision.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The green space plan has it still exists, but it's not real active on people's radar. Maybe not as active as goose poop is.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that. What'd you say?
The green space plan is something that might be also resurrected. I'm not sure it's used as much as it could be, but it includes some of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We're approaching 10 and we can continue talking, but I want to be conscious of people's time. And does anybody want to sort of wrap up next steps, or do you want to keep talking? What's your preference?
I'm going to have to move along.
Yeah, me too.
I think the next step is to get the folks who might participate in a notice of intent together to talk with folks at DQ about the scope of an appropriate scope of a proposal,
Sure.
and especially how we can meet the matching requirements.
Sounds good. Anybody else have any parting comments?
I was just gonna say that I talked to Elgro last week, and this has been in the works for a year or so, but they have this Adopt a Drain program where it's like this custom built online program where like you go out and, you know, log onto your phone and just like, you know, pick where you live or you work, and you can see the public catch basins, and you can adopt it. And then, like, you know, the main goal is to educate people on where the stormwater goes once it, you know, hits a catch basin, but hopefully people also take care of it and clean it and, you know, just remove brush and stuff from it. But they're rewriting the code to make it easier to input new areas. They had previously borrowed like San Francisco's open source code, but they're creating their own custom one with the help of this citizens hacker group. But they are volunteering to help the Middle Grand, like expand it to the Middle Grand, which would include, you know, us, obviously. Which I think then it would become the largest spanning Adopt a Drain program in the country. So I just heard from them like Friday, they're really close to wrapping that up, and then it would really just take GIS, you know, like lat and long of catch basins, and then the jurisdiction of who owns it, and they would just plug it in, and everything would just be automated through this program. So that could be cool. And that'd be a good educational tool too. And they're willing to adjust their website to make it like the Grand River Adopt a River or Adopt a Drain program, and throw up the GLRC logos and stuff. So it's more of a upstream, downstream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you said? Elgro. What's the acronym there?
It's the Lower Grand River Organization of Watersheds. So they are an agency of the Grand Valley Metro Council, which is the regional planning organization of Kent County, you know, West Michigan. So they're like the tri-county of that side of the state. But Elgro started as their stormwater committee and expanded. Where ours, like MGRO, has gone off on their own as a nonprofit. I think Fred Cowles met with you guys earlier last year, talking about green infrastructure. He's from MGRO. I'm on MGRO's board as well, so I represent a lot of the same type of groups. But yeah, so Elgro is very similar to what I do, just they have a little more expansive programming because of their size of their staff. Really, there's like 9 people working on this stuff, environmental.
I see.
We have an environmental commission meeting tonight. I know some of you will be there. You're all welcome to attend if you like. Preceded by an environmental justice meeting at 6. If you didn't get that, if you'd like the announcement, or if you'd like to join us, I can be happy to send you the links. I know Sarah's been doing some environmental justice work with other communities, or her church, I guess.
Mhm.
Did you, Cliff, I don't want to take up your evening, but I'll share what you prepared with the group. If you'd like to discuss it, present anything, you're welcome, but I don't want to, we've taken up a lot of your time. So
Yeah, I really
just know that
appreciate
you're
you
welcome.
being here.
What time is it? Actually have my in-laws coming over for a outside social distance cookout. So what time is it?
It's at 7.
7. Okay, I'll see if I could stop in. I'll let you know. But
don't worry about it.
I might get in trouble from the wife.
Maybe we can have you back as a presenter in one of our green themes in September or November October to officially present some of what we've come up with.
Yeah, and you can feel free to share what I have with anyone. But I mean, like I said in my email, it's kind of my working draft. It's not any sort of like final report, just kind of like my notes as I went along. So some of it's informal, like check on this, you know. But as I told Leroy in my email, there's a lot of specific technical things that are missing, or like options for, you know, future, you know, requirements of particular, you know, inclusion of bioretention and all this. Like there's a lot of just technical stuff that, you know, are options, but at this point there's not even mention of what green infrastructure is in the code. You know, there's some goals that would be met through green infrastructure, but just like defining what bioretention is and defining what rain gardens are in the municipal code is just, I think, the very first step, and then encouraging the usage. And then the next step would be that more technical, you know, creating some new requirements around it. But at this point, there's like a complete lack of reference, and that will go a long way in improving it. So there's some low-hanging fruit for sure.
Great. Thank you for that brief summary. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Any other parting comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. You're muted, Bill, if you wanted to say something. Okay. All right. See y'all later. Enjoy the day out. It's so beautiful out there.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.